Grace Family Church, you made room. One church, many locations, making room together.
Hey Grace Digital, we're here at the Umhlanga Campus, and for the first time ever, Jason is going to be talking to you from the stage of Umhlanga. And Jason leads the Irresistible Church Network in Australasia, which has a beautiful vision, right?
Yeah. We just want to create churches that even people that don't normally go to church would love to engage with. And we're seeing that happen now all around the world, including here in South Africa.
Awesome. So just lean in just where you are on your couch. You're going to look into the Umhlanga Campus today, and we're in for a treat.
Can't wait. I need to give you a quick explanation. Uncle Perko, okay, so I need to explain the Perko thing. If you're not familiar with Australians love to butcher the English language. Like, we love taking any word that we deem to be too long, which is basically anything with two syllables, and we cut it in half, and then we add an O or a Y to the end of it. So if you come to Australia and you meet somebody that's a carpenter, you'll hear them called a chippy. You can explain that to your neighbor if they can't figure it out. An electrician is called a sparky because they touch things occasionally they shouldn't touch. And fortunately for me, when I was a young child, they took my last name, Perkins, cut it in half, and they added an O to the end, which I'm very grateful for, because middle school would have been very difficult had they put a Y on the end. Being called Perky my whole life would have been very awkward. But it's interesting. I meet people all around the world. I have the privilege of traveling around the world, and I meet people and they actually think my first name is Perko. And I always wonder to myself, what kind of parents do you think I had who would name their child Perko Perkins? Like, that's a very obnoxious name. So, hey, that's kind of to get that out of the way. I want to welcome you all here this morning. So great to be with you here at Grace Family Umhlanga. But for those that are watching online, we're grateful that you're tuning in to be with us today as well, and at other campuses across the Grace Family Network here in Durban, and also Irresistible Church Network partners around South Africa as well. So it's great to have all of you in the room. I'm actually a PE teacher by profession. So I have a 4-year degree in whistleblowing, and I'm very good at it. I didn't bring a whistle with me this morning, but because I did PE for a number of years, I love playing sports. I love playing games of any sort. In fact, I'm a bit of a competitive junkie, and which is why we don't need to talk about rugby here this morning. As an Australian, we'll go on to other sports like the Commonwealth Games and other things. But this morning, I'd love to play a game with you if you would allow me, if you would kind of humor me. I know it's church, and some of you are thinking, are you allowed to play games in church? The answer is yes. When an Australian is speaking, you're allowed to play games in church. So if you would do me a favor, if you're here in the room, I'd love to invite you, if you're able, to stand to play this game, okay? Or if you're watching online, that's going to be very awkward in a cafe, standing in the middle of the cafe, people, strangers all around you. So you can just stay seated. But if you're at a partner church or at one of the other Grace Family campuses, I want to invite you to stand as well. This game is called Face Off, okay? Very simple game. This particular edition of Face Off is what I call the accessible edition of the game, okay? So I'm going to bring up two images on the screen. There's going to be two pictures, and you're going to have to pick which of those two pictures you think is the least accessible than the other one, okay? So if you think it's the one on the left, you're going to face that direction. If you think it's the one on your right, you're going to face that direction. And if you're still facing me when I count down from 3, 3, 2, 1, and we reveal the answer, then you'll be eliminated from the game. All right, so it's not a game for every generation. There's some generations think everyone should get a trophy at the end of the season, but be careful, don't laugh. You might be in that generation. But this is a game where we will eliminate people. But the first round, okay, first round is a grace round, so you can kind of get used to the game. But after that, unlike Jesus' grace, it ends there, okay? So it's over. That's a bad church joke. If you're not familiar with church, just ask your friend that invited you and they can explain it later, okay? All right, so first round, let's bring up the most exclusive restaurants in the world. These are the two most exclusive restaurants in the world. One of them actually has a 12-month wait list in order to get a reservation at this restaurant, okay? Again, this is the practice round. If you think it's the one in the UK, then you're going to face that direction, okay? If you think it's the one in New York, you're going to face that direction. And again, if you're still facing me when I count down from 3 and we reveal the answer, then you'll be eliminated from the game. All right, you ready? Everybody ready? If you're watching online, just type in left or right in the chat. If you're at one of the other campuses, turn to your left or right. Here we go. On the count of 3, the answer is 3, 2, 1. It is Bristol, UK. Okay, so if you were facing that way, you would still be in the game. We got people cheering down the front here. This lady's clapping. It's not even 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning. Doesn't take much to get people excited in Durban, all right? That was the practice round. You're all still in, okay? You're all still in the game. But this one is for all the marbles, okay? In fact, let's just kind of maybe suggest why you want to be in the game. Some of you are wondering, is there any point to this game? The winner of this game is actually going to receive a free coffee here after the service. So we have literally spared no expense on the prizes this morning for today's game. All right, so next round. Let's go to the next round. This is exclusive, like fitness clubs around the world. The top 2 in the world, hardest to get into, most exclusive, very hard to access. If you think it's the one in Zambia, then you're going to face that direction. If you think it's the one in London, you're going to face that direction. And again, you've got 3 seconds to choose. You ready? In 3, 2, 1, the answer is the Zambia one. All right. So some of you have been eliminated from the game. Go ahead and take your seat. Now, I just want to point out something, okay? I do notice a couple of people that were here in the earlier service, and that's called cheating. And of all places to cheat, this is not the one. Like even people that don't normally go to church would say, probably not best to cheat in church, okay? It's kind of that fire thing that could come down from heaven. So if you were here first service, can I just encourage you? I could buy you a coffee. If you need a coffee that bag, I would love to. Don't cheat in church, okay? All right, next round. These are exclusive neighborhoods around the world to get into. This one in Brazil, very exclusive. The one in the US, there's in Florida. Which one do you think is most exclusive? Royal Palm Yacht Club, that direction. The one in Brazil, this direction. And again, in 3, make a decision. If you're still facing me, you'll be out. 2, 1. The answer is the one in Florida, the country club, all right? All right. Now, let's talk about shopping centers. Now, I know here in Durban, you have some very elite shopping centers, but the 2 most exclusive shopping centers in the world are actually found in the same country, in the UAE. Is it the Dubai Mall or is it the Mall of the Emirates? This is going to start to weed out people that were just guessing 50-50, all right? You ready? You got 3. Make a decision. I see people spinning around because they don't know which side to. 2, 1. The answer is the Dubai Mall. Okay. All right, let's just check in on the sections. Section's not doing too bad. This section's doing well. Middle, by percentage of people, not doing well at all. This section over here, quite strong. And then the far section, not too bad. Hopefully, if you're still playing online, you're just dropping in left or right. Hopefully, somebody in the cafe will buy you a free coffee at the end, okay? All right, now, let's change things up a little bit. We've been talking about hard to get into places, so not very accessible. or really exclusive, I'd love for you to think kind of, because you're still in the game, you guys are talented, you'll know how to do this, want to flip it on its head, the most accessible, so easy to get into now we're looking for, not hard to get into, but easy to access, okay? And we're talking racket sports. These two right here, ping pong or badminton. Which of these two racket sports do you think is the most accessible racket sport to get into in the world? The number one, easiest to get into racket sport in the world. Is it ping pong or is it badminton, okay? And again, you got 3 seconds to choose. The answer is in 3, 2, still some people, making the decision. 1, the answer is neither of them. So you are all actually eliminated from the game. Thank you so much for playing. I now get to keep the coffee, which is great. I'm super grateful for that. Actually, there was a gentleman over here that was still standing, has a very similar haircut to me. And so Wayne, because you also have a similar haircut, that gentleman right there in the kind of greenish gray, give him a big round of applause. That, by the way, that whole thing of just ending it by neither of them being right, that's just an old PE teacher's trick to end the game and get on with the lesson. And so that's what we're doing, because actually the most accessible racquetball sport in the world, the easiest to get into, is actually a sport called pickleball. Now, I know here in South Africa, you guys are all huge fans of paddle. Lots of people play paddle. I've tried to play paddle. It's not that accessible. I don't look very good on a paddle court. On a pickleball court, though, I look very good. I can beat up on all the old people on the court. It's amazing. It's just incredible. It doesn't matter whether you've played a racquetball sport before or not. Anybody that starts playing pickleball, it's so accessible. It's so easy. You can actually get pretty competitive within maybe an hour or two of playing. It's a great sport. I love pickleball so much that when my wife, Kristen, and we moved back from the United States, where we lived for almost 20 years, back to Australia, to Brisbane about 7 years ago, I desperately wanted to play pickleball, but I couldn't find any places and people to play with because it was such a new sport. And so eventually one afternoon, I actually called a couple of my mates and I joined up with these 3 guys and we played doubles pickleball at this tennis court. And I drew out the lines and we played for the afternoon. They loved it so much that they said, Perko, hey, can we come back every Tuesday afternoon and let's play pickleball together? And then they started telling some of their friends about it. All of a sudden, every Tuesday afternoon, we had like 40 people showing up to play pickleball on a Tuesday. And we had to get ourselves organized because we were paying for the court fees and so on. And so we put together a little membership where you'd pay into it. And because there was money involved and all of that, we actually had to become like an official pickleball club. So I became the president, ladies and gentlemen, of the Morton City Pickleball Club in Brisbane, Australia. And thank you. You can, absolutely. I appreciate that. Well, we sat down, and by the way, we have like 250 members now. It's the most fun game. It's a super fun game. But I remember sitting down with the first group of guys that played pickleball together, and we had to come up with like a purpose statement or a mission statement for the club in order to be able to put in our application to become an official organization. And I remember we all landed the plane on this simple statement. Here was why Morton City Pickleball Club existed. We wanted as many people in our community to discover pickleball and fall in love with it. That was our whole goal. That was the aim. We wanted as many people in our community to discover pickleball and to fall in love with it. Even if they'd never heard of it before or picked up a paddle or a racket or any other sport like that before, we wanted them to discover it and fall in love with it. The most crazy thing happened. Within about 6 months, as the club began to grow and as people got better and better, I remember arriving one Tuesday afternoon at the club to play with my friends, and I overheard a conversation with a group of people, and they said this. They said, we really love playing pickleball on Tuesday afternoons, but what would be really cool is if we created a special group for Thursday night for all the people that are really good at pickleball. And I thought to myself, wait a second, 6 months ago, you'd never even heard of pickleball before. And all of a sudden, you're trying to create an exclusive group of people that are really good at pickleball, and a group that will be difficult to get into. We've all had some sort of experience like this, whether it was at school or maybe in your neighborhood or in your workplace, where a group of people kind of made it difficult for you to get into whatever club it was. And I put up a few suggestions of what it might look like for you on the screen here. Maybe for you it was like a football team or a library group. Can you imagine a library group making it difficult for people to get into the group? But just go with me. Maybe that's your experience. Maybe it was some sort of group at work. You wanted to be a part of a project, but you couldn't get into the group, but you wanted to be a part of it. Here's what I'd love for you to do. I'd love for you to turn to your neighbor right now. I'm going to give you literally 60 seconds, and I want you to tell them about a group that you wanted to be a part of, but it was kind of difficult for you to get into. And if you're watching online, you can just type that group in the chat. But turn to your neighbor right now and just explain to them, this is the group that I wanted to be a part of, but it was kind of tough for me to get into it. All right, I'll give you 60 seconds, and your time starts now. All right. I hope I didn't do anything that triggered anybody. Anybody need to go to their therapist now and talk about that rugby team they couldn't get into as a middle school kid? I hope I didn't stir anything up. It was just a light exercise for everybody to realize that we all have had this kind of experience in the past. As I've shared my story about pickleball with people literally around the world, and as I've had people tell me about their challenge to get into a group, I've discovered a universal truth. And here's the universal truth. Don't miss this. The gravitational pull of every organization is towards insiders. Over time, even though we started out with this clear goal of every person in our community discovering pickleball and falling in love with it, over time, and it didn't take long, 6 months, we drifted towards people that were already in the club. People that already knew how to play pickleball. Because the organization or the gravitational pull of every organization is always towards people that are already part of the organization. Whether it's a school or a company or some other organization, it's always towards people that are already in the club. Now, if you're not a church person, if you would say, hey, I don't typically go to church, and maybe you're watching online and you stumbled across the link somehow, or maybe somebody invited you to church because they said there are cute girls or cute guys that come to this church. I don't know how you landed here, okay? But if you don't consider yourself a church person, you can kind of check out of the conversation for a moment, all right? I'm giving you permission. You can take out your phone, check Instagram, whatever you need to do. I'll let you know when you can check back in. For all the church people in the room and all the church people watching online, I want to have an honest conversation just for a moment, a private conversation, or as private, at least they're recording it for the internet, but it's close to private, okay? But here's what I want us to be honest about. Not only is the gravitational pull of every organization towards insiders, if we're honest, church people, if we're having a cup of tea or a cup of coffee and we were honest, we would have to admit and agree that the gravitational pull of every church tends towards insiders as well. Over time, even though the church may have started out with this goal of every person in their community discovering Jesus and falling in love with him, over time, the gravitational pull of even every church is towards insiders. Now, if you're not a church person and you kind of checked out for a moment, now's your time to check back into the conversation. My wife and I, Kristen and I, we get to travel around and visit churches all around the world. We love what we get to do. And oftentimes, after church on a Sunday morning, we'll go out to lunch with maybe the pastor of the church or some of the staff, and inevitably, they'll say to us, hey, what did you think of Sunday morning? Or tell us what you think of the services at our church. And instead of telling them what we thought of it, we'll ask them some questions about something we observed or something we experienced. And we'll say, hey, we noticed that you did this on Sunday, or we noticed that this happened during the service. Hey, tell us why do you do it that way? And here's the response that we hear from church people all the time, and I quote, that's just the way we do things around here. Or the other one that we hear oftentimes is, we have always done it that way. We'll ask, hey, why did you do this? Or why did this happen? And they'll say, well, that's just the way we've always done it around here. Because the truth is, the gravitational pull of every organization, including churches, tends to, over time, go towards insiders. That's kind of the bad news. The good news is this is not a new problem, okay? This is not a problem that just showed up in 2026. This has actually been a problem in the church from the very beginning. I want to take you back this morning, do a little history lesson. I want to take you back to the first century when the church first began. It started on what people refer to in church world now as Pentecost Sunday. It was 50 days after Easter. And even if you wouldn't consider yourself a church person, maybe you're exploring faith and still new to the Bible, you're probably familiar with Easter when we celebrate Jesus being crucified on a cross and being buried and then rising again from the dead after 3 days. 50 days after that event took place in the first century, a guy named Peter got up in Jerusalem and he told the story of Jesus dying, being buried, and coming back to life. And we're told that over 3,000 people joined the church and became followers of Jesus on that first day. That's when the church began. Shortly after that, some people within that group started to create some hurdles or created some obstacles for people that wanted to join and become part of the church. And we pick up in Acts chapter 15, which is a book in the New Testament. If you're not familiar with the Bible, it's the second half of the Bible when Jesus shows up on the scene. The New Testament starts with 4 accounts of the life of Jesus: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And right after those 4 accounts, we have the book of Acts, which tells us about the history of the church. That's when we discover Peter in Jerusalem telling the story and 3,000 people starting on that first day. Here's what happened a few years after that. In Acts chapter 15, we read this struggle. It says that certain people came down from Judea to Antioch and were teaching the believers, unless you are circumcised according to the custom taught by Moses, you cannot be saved. In other words, let me put it in context for you. In other words, unless you stop by the medical van outside the pickleball club, you can't come into the pickleball club and become a member. Which is why in our pickleball club, if that were the case, there'd be mostly women in the club and no men joining the club. That's essentially what these people were saying. Unless people that were not Jewish came and were circumcised according to Jewish custom, they couldn't become part of this new group called the church. That's what they were saying. Now, let me give you a little geography lesson, okay? Give you some context as to where this was all taking place. Down at the bottom of the map, you see Jerusalem. That's where Peter got up on Pentecost Sunday. Judea is the surrounding area there around Jerusalem. And then up in Antioch is where this conversation is taking place that we've just read about. Now, it says that they went down from Jerusalem to Antioch. Although geographically it looks like it's up, it's actually from elevation down to Antioch from the higher place in Jerusalem. The story continues. In Acts chapter 15, verse 2, it says, "This brought Paul and Barnabas into sharp dispute and debate with them," which is kind of like nice English for they were really ticked off with the group of people. "So Paul and Barnabas were appointed, along with some other believers, to go up to Jerusalem to see the apostles and elders about this question." So they head off to Jerusalem. They've been appointed to go and talk to the elders, the people that lead the church in Jerusalem, about this issue. And then it continues. It says that the church sent them on their way, and as they traveled through Phoenicia and Samaria, they told how Gentiles, those outside the Jewish custom, had been converted to beginning to follow Jesus. This news made all the believers in that area very glad. Now, let me take you back to the map and just show you what's taking place. So Paul and Barnabas leave Antioch. They're going through Phoenicia and Samaria. This area here is where people were so excited about all of the Gentiles that had joined the church and that had been converted to following Jesus. And so they head now into Jerusalem. When they came to Jerusalem, it tells us in the next verse that when they came to Jerusalem, they were welcomed by the church and the apostles and elders, to whom they reported everything God had done through them. So they're explaining to this group of elders, these leaders in the church in Jerusalem, all the things that are happening with those outside the Jewish custom, the Gentiles that were beginning to follow Jesus and that were joining the church. And then the conversation turns. Then some of them, it says, then some of the believers who belonged to the party of the Pharisees stood up. Now, just to give you a quick context here, the party of the Pharisees were the same religious leaders in Jerusalem that actually put Jesus to death on the cross. Some of these Pharisees, although they crucified Jesus, they actually miraculously became followers of Jesus when he rose again from the dead. They realized, oh, he was the Messiah, and they began following Jesus. But they were so tied to their old Jewish customs that they believed in order for someone to truly follow Jesus, they had to hold on to their Jewish traditions. It continues, it says there, the Gentiles, they said, must be circumcised and required to keep the law of Moses. So if you want to join the church, if you want to get into the club, you've got to go be circumcised. You've got to become like the Jewish practices told them, the law of Moses, in order to begin following Jesus. The story continues. The apostles and elders met to consider this question, and after much discussion, Peter got up and addressed them. Remember who Peter was? First day of the church in Jerusalem. He told the story of Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection. 3,000 people begin following Jesus. Peter gets up and he says these words, brothers, you know that some time ago, God made a choice among you that the Gentiles might hear from my lips the message of the gospel and believe. And then Peter goes on to explain, here's what happened. God, who knows their heart, showed that he accepted them by giving the Holy Spirit to them, just as he did to us. He did not discriminate between us and them, for he purified their hearts by faith. Now, he goes on in the next verse. Now, then, why do you try to test God, Peter asks, by putting on the necks of the Gentiles a yoke that neither we nor our ancestors have been able to bear? Peter asks this great question. He looks at the crowd. I imagine Peter kind of getting worked up and getting excited about what he's talking about. And he says to them, why are we trying to ask this group of people to do something that neither we or our grandparents have been able to do? In other words, Peter is saying we can't keep our own standards, let alone the standards you're trying to put onto these people. And I imagine Peter pretty worked up at this moment. He kind of lets out a yell. He says, no, he says, we believe it is through the grace of our Lord Jesus that we are saved just as they are. Now, this is such good news. This is great news, especially for those that are maybe trying to figure out whether following Jesus is something that they want to do or not. This is great news because so many people I talk to who are trying to figure out their journey of faith, they're trying to figure out, is Jesus really who he says he was? Is the Bible really true? Can I trust this thing? Many people have this kind of thought that they have to clean up their life. They have to get their life in order to begin following Jesus. And I believe that if Peter were here today, he would lean in and he would say to you, you don't have to do anything to begin following Jesus except simply say yes to him. He says the same grace that allowed us to be in this club, to be a part of this movement, to following Jesus, the same grace that God gave to us is the same grace that he wants to give to you. So the good news is simply this. If you're considering following Jesus, you don't have to clean up your life. You don't have to go and restore your finances. You don't have to go restore some relationship that's broken in your life. You don't have to stop doing some habit that you picked up along the way. All you have to simply do is say yes to the grace of Jesus. That's it. And Peter made it clear then, and he continues to make it clear for us today. Then the whole assembly tells us that they became silent as they listened to Barnabas and Paul telling about the signs and wonders God had done among the Gentiles through them. When they finished, James spoke up. Brothers, he said, listen to me. Now, if you think Peter was a guy that they respected in the first century church, James, the brother of Jesus, would have had a lot of clout in this meeting. They would have all listened. They would have all leaned in and said, hey, if we're going to listen to somebody about this issue that we're discussing, James is probably somebody that we should listen into. And then James says these powerful words, such an important statement. James says this, It is my judgment, therefore, that we should not make it difficult for the Gentiles who are turning to God. After all this discussion about circumcision, following the law of Moses, whether people should be allowed to be a part of the church or not in the church, James stands up and he says simply this: it's my judgment, after hearing everything that's been said, after knowing my brother, the Messiah, he says, it is my judgment, therefore, that we should not make it difficult for those that are turning to God. So here's a question I think we all have to ask. A simple question: how is the church making it difficult for those that are turning to God? In what ways does the church inadvertently sometimes make it difficult or challenging for people that are turning to God in this community? I love watching the Olympics. I've mentioned already that I'm a huge fan of sports. I also love watching the Commonwealth Games, and one of my favorite events at the Commonwealth Games and at the Olympics is the event of hurdling. Those sprinters that run super fast, but they can also get over the hurdles. Full disclosure, this is a bit of a confession of mine. Part of the reason I love watching the hurdles is because every so often one of them will trip and it kind of is a cascading effect, and all the runners, in fact, here's a picture. I know you're going to think much less of me now. This is a picture of one of the hurdlers taking a tumble, and now they're all taking a tumble. It's kind of humorous. But as I watch these hurdles, I'm reminded of the truth that not only does the church sometimes make it difficult for people turning to God, but I have to ask a more important question. And the more important question is this: am I making it difficult? Am I creating hurdles for people that are turning to God? You see, I can easily point the finger at the church and say, oh, look at the way the church is making it difficult for people in our community that are wanting to turn to God. Look at the way they expect people to dress maybe, or look at the way they expect people to be able to behave, or look at the way they expect people to speak. I've got all these ways that I can point the finger out there, but I have to ask a more powerful question: am I creating hurdles for people in my sphere of influence that are turning to God? It's a powerful question. I'd love for you to consider the question this morning. In what ways could you be potentially inadvertently creating hurdles for maybe your neighbors that are turning to God, maybe a coworker that's turning towards God or spiritually curious, or someone you go to school with, or somebody you go to university with, maybe somebody you do business with? In what ways are you inadvertently creating hurdles for those that are turning to God? The reason I'm so passionate about this is I'm absolutely convinced that every community in South Africa needs a church that removes all the hurdles for people that are turning to God. I'm convinced that every community needs at least one church that doesn't make it difficult for the people in their community that are turning towards God. So can I encourage you this morning to consider the question: am I creating a hurdle for those that are turning towards God? Can I maybe even push you a little bit further and ask you to consider, is maybe God inviting me to be a part of this vision of every community in South Africa having at least one church that doesn't make it difficult for those that are turning to God? I'm convinced there are some of you here this morning, some of you that are watching online, that God maybe is inviting you to help create a church in a community here in South Africa that doesn't currently have a church that makes it easy for people that are turning to God. Maybe God's inviting one of you to say, hey, I want to be a part of being a solution to this every community vision here in South Africa. Or maybe you aren't being invited to go to some new community and create a new church, but maybe God is asking you, what are you doing to help those that are turning towards God in your community? So can I encourage you, can I invite you to consider these questions? Am I, God, am I creating any hurdles in my life that causes those that are turning towards you to make it difficult for them to come to know you? Would you pray with me this morning? Father, thank you for this incredible story of how the church wrestled with this challenge in the first century of creating hurdles, creating unnecessary obstacles for those that were turning towards you. God, I thank you for preserving this story so that we today could understand what it looks like to remove every hurdle for people that are turning to you. God, would you help each of us this morning, whether we're here in the room or watching online or around the country. God, would you give us the wisdom to know exactly what you're inviting us to do with what we've just heard? And then God, would you give us the courage to go and do it? I ask in Jesus' precious name.